Hi everyone, welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be making some vintagey bits for some projects that I want to do. So I just thought I'd go through my collection of papers and things, just so if you're new to doing this kind of art craft, then I might get some ideas as to where you can get bits from. So things like receipts. I feel like I don't actually need to make this vintagey because it's gone really yellow. It's actually 22 years old. I've still got a receipt and I can't even tell what I bought. It's from Selfridges in London. I spent £22.25. I don't know what on. But it's gone quite yellow in there. So just found another one. This is from Tesco a couple of weeks ago. So things like just some cardstock. I've got some kitchen paper that's been used for I don't know what I used it for, but it's got some blue on it. What else have we got? We've got this is wrapping paper. I like the colour. I think really you could use both sides of that, couldn't you? I like the grid actually, and it's got bits of, I think they're reindeers on that side. I like the colour of that. Then I've just got newspaper bits. It's already been used for something or other. Newspaper. The insides of envelopes are always good. They're very decorative. It's amazing how many different designs you get actually on the envelopes. But yeah, that's quite good. Not sure about the colour though, but anyway. This one, I really like that stamp actually. It's from New Orleans 11 years ago. There we go. So I like that. This is some paper that I made myself a couple of years ago. So that could be useful. I was making seed paper. You can see the seeds there. I've got a measuring tape from IKEA. I could do something with that. Probably have to use the inches side to make it more vintagey. I don't know why, I always feel like tape measures are quite vintage. I've got this stencil actually as well. So I could use that. And what other stencils have I got? This one, clocks are another kind of vintage image to me. So I've got that clock stamp as well. Other stamps I've got postage. I've got some more postage ones somewhere. That one. I think this buttons always seem vintagey to me as well. As do maps. I've got a map. This map as well. I think this is more of a sort of a fantasy map. I think it says something like Skull Island on it. Handwriting script is vintagey, as is the music. I don't know why some images just seem more vintage style, don't they? Certain flowers. That one, this one. I don't know if this is just a British thing, but teapots and teacups. I don't actually drink tea, a bit unusual, but butterflies, I think, vintagey. Got some letter stamps as well. These ones might be more the right style. Okay. And then, so for the stamping, got some distress inks. And just standard black. I've got that one out as well. And I've got washi tape I might be able to use. Also some really nice designs in there. Yeah, then back to the paper. So tissue paper maybe. So this tissue paper, I think I used this to decoupage a tissue box ages ago. but that's definitely a vintage style to me. More tissue paper. There's bits and pieces left over. That was some kind of artwork that went wrong, I think. Just a bit of watercolour paper. A bit of a postcard. That was obviously something I started and changed my mind about. I've got paint swatches. Could be useful. This was a back, like the back of the packaging for some stencils. So I've got loads of these actually, but that's definitely a vintage style. Got some jelly print cut-offs. Book pages. Just got scrap paper that I've used to, I don't know, practice on or like paintbrushes on. These are my photos that I was using to, I used to do photo transfers ages ago. I think I was just practicing different things, so that could be useful. That one as well, a bit of tissue paper. I've got a tag. These bits of watercolour paper I've cut up for some reason. I think these were bits of paper from an ATC pack that I had once. Some more papers, texture paper, a bit more there, and then maybe kitchen paper. Got a nice bit of texture on. So yeah, just loads of little bits and pieces really. So I'm just going to see if I can put some things together, and they might be useful for what I've got in mind. If not, then they'll definitely be good for some kind of junk journal, which I haven't made a junk journal for so many years. I was quite into them at one point. But yeah, they might be okay for what I've got in mind. But if not, we'll still have fun making them. So the first one that I'm making is with this tag, and I'm just going to distress the edges. So I'm using vintage photo colour and just rubbing over the edges. Sometimes I use a sponge, which I think I do here as well, but using the actual ink pad works okay for me sometimes. So I'm just adding a bit more colour over the actual tag. I do really like Tim Holtz's distress inks. I think they're really useful, especially for doing stuff like this. So now I'm just using the script stamp to add to the background. I think it's always handy to have a scrap piece of paper underneath, because the excess will go on it and you can use that as another piece in other work. So these are the jelly print cut-offs that I've done before. I'm just tearing the paper because I really like the teared paper look.
glue I'm using is just Pritt stick. Sometimes I use PVA, but it can get a bit messy. Pritt stick is fine for this kind of project. So I'm just adding a bit more of the vintage photo distress ink. And this is just a bit of packaging that I had. Quite like the colour, I think it's quite vintagey, but I'm not entirely sure that I should have put it on top of the jelly paper. Maybe I should have stamped the butterfly directly onto the jelly print rather than put it on the green. And now I'm just stamping the flower. I'm just using black archival ink. And then these are the washi tapes. I just add a little bit for extra decoration. Again, as I'm doing a voiceover at the moment, so I'm kind of looking back on it, and I made these a week or so ago. And it's funny how when you look back on things, you kind of you change your mind about things, don't you? But this is the finished butterfly. I do add some colour to the wings later. So onto the second one. So I'm just stamping some music notes onto book pages. And then the paper that I'm using in the background is just a textured paper. And then this is the decoupage tissue paper. Quite like the green and orange brown colours on there. I'm distressing the edge of the book paper. I don't know if anyone else feels like me about ripping up books, but I really struggle with it. I love the look it gives, but I do find it hard to rip up books. So this is the measuring tape stencil, and now I'm using filled paint. So this is a green ink, and just using the sponge to go over it. So I wasn't entirely sure if that one was finished, but it wasn't. So this third one is actually my favourite one, I think, of all of them. So this is just a tiny piece of watercolour paper that I was doing something else with one time. So I'm just making it into like a ticket size piece of paper. So I've used the crinkly scissors to do the top and bottom. and just cutting out the little semicircle bits at the ends. So again, this is vintage photo distress ink for the edges. And now I'm using the world stamp for a bit of a background. And as always, don't waste the ink. I'm sure I'll use it in something at some point. And this is a tissue paper that I've stamped with a script stamp. I like using tissue paper with stamping on because it really blends into the background, as you can see there. And now I'm going to use the stamp that I really like. And distressing the edges of that one. So this is the finished one. This one is finished. I don't come back to this one, but I do really like that one. I think it looks really good. So the next one, I'm using just a bit of cardstock, using the ruler to give a bit of a slightly jagged edge. And then I'm using the clock stencil with the green peeled paint distress ink. And now I'm stamping a clock onto a book page. I think this is a book page about recipes. I think it's a pregnancy book, but it wasn't mine. I think I got it from a charity shop maybe. So obviously I'm just ripping the edge of the image there. I generally prefer it to cutting with paper. Cutting with scissors. And distressing the edges. That's the vintage photo distress ink. And a bit of the green packaging paper. And that bit is the reindeer wrapping paper, but I think I'm using the grid side, not the reindeer side. and just gluing it down. And you can see the teapot stamp there. And now I'm just adding a bit more distress ink to the stamped image, just to give it that vintagey look. And then trimming the excess paper off the edges. So now I'm just using a black pencil, I think it's a Derwent pencil, just to put a time in. I think I do 5 o'clock. Yeah. And now I'm just going to stamp the word tea. Depending on whereabouts you are in the UK, tea can mean different things. For me, tea is either the drink, or it is a lighter meal of the day. Some people, I think it tends to be up north more, they might use the word tea to mean the main meal and use dinner for lunchtime. But for me, it's more breakfast, lunch and dinner, except on a Sunday. If we have the main meal at lunchtime, then tea will be in the evening, so it must be a Sunday. Okay, so for this next one, I'm using the postmark stamp to stamp this old bit of something I've started before. It looks like I've used vintage photo to already distress the edges. And so now I'm just stamping the bird cage onto some pink paper. I think I said before at the beginning that this pink paper, you can see some green as well in the bottom left there. It's just from a pack of ATC bits that I bought once. And this is Dusty Concord, it's like a purpley colour. And looking at the washi tape again, so this is a purpley one. I think it's got trees on it. I generally try to add more than one of something, as it gives a better balance that way. So this is another bit of paper from the ATC box. And that was the peeled paint distress ink. that one is the bird cage. So for this one, I'm using a photo I took of the Eiffel Tower. Like I said earlier, these were the photos I printed when I was doing photo transfers. And I did make, one time I did a polymer clay ATC using a picture of the Eiffel Tower. I think I might have shown that actually in my very first video when I showed a lot of miniature art that I'd done. So this brown paper is just something, I think I'd ordered something from someone by the looks of it, and that was just a little wallet that they put whatever it was I bought in there. So using the crinkle scissors for the ends. So this is another ticket. I'm using the postal stamp again. And this time I'm using a pastel dome pencil, blue for the sky. You can't really see it too well once I finish, but it's still there. So because it's pastel, I'm just rubbing it with my finger. And then this is broken china distress ink, which is blue. So I'm just adding the vintage photo distress ink. Let's give it that old look. And this is a paint swatch from the DIY store. And dusty concord for the edges. This is just a bit of tissue paper. I don't think that's a stamped image. I think that was some packaging. It's like a kind of a flowery image on there. Just gluing the Eiffel Tower on top and then placing that onto the background. And this is the final use of the distress ink. It's a bit of dusty concord around the edges, which is the purple colour, and then just a little bit on top there. And that is the final Eiffel Tower. So I'm coming back to this one because what I realised is that tissue paper in the bottom right looks very much like an owl. And I remembered that I had an owl stamped onto a bit of scrap paper, so I thought Let's have another owl. Let's make it into an owl piece of art. So I'm just cutting out the owl from the scrap bit of paper, distressing the edges, and then just gluing it in the opposite corner. Yeah, that one's still not finished. So for this one, I'm using some squares of watercolour paper and then just stamping a button on top. Now I've not used the acrylic block to stamp because I wanted to I didn't want it very sharp, like proper edge to it. I wanted it to be a bit wobbly. So I'm just ripping up another book page that's already been stamped. So I'm keeping the bird cage and a bit of music, and then just putting it on some paper. It's got a bit of texture to it. So distressing the edges. I think that was the green distressing peel paint. And then using the tape measure stencil again with the purple Dusty Concord distress ink. And I'm cutting out the hand from the packaging. It's an image you see quite a lot, don't you? In various places. I'm just trying it in different positions and different backgrounds and things. Just using a green strip of paper at the top. And then putting the hand on top of that. And then stamping the button on the other square bit of watercolour. Yeah, I'm just working out what kind of background to put them on. And I decided to just distress the edges afterwards. So vintage photo. I'm just using another pair of crinkly scissors for the top and bottom. And then just distressing the edges again. And that's that one. So here we are back at the, I call it the owl one now. So I'm just stamping a flower onto some paper, using the Derwent pencils to colour the flower. So sort of pinky colour and yellow. And then I think I add some green for the leaves. And I'm using the ruler to tear the edges. It was a bit tricky because it was quite a small bit of paper. And then just a bit of vintage photo distress ink. I'm just doing the flower again at the top there. And at the bottom. And then I colour these in as well. And I'd put a bit of colour on the owl too, just to tie it all together. So I'm using the same pencils. Just a little bit more distress ink. If you want to make these little vintage bits of art, I think you do need some way of distressing them. Either distress inks, or you can use things like tea and coffee, brown paint, I suppose. And there is the finished, finally, owl one. And now I'm just adding a bit of colour to the butterfly. So same pencils. They're just Derwent colouring pencils. I think I got these when I went to the Derwent Pencil Museum in the Lake District. So if you're ever up there, definitely pay a visit. It has changed over the years, but it's really interesting. They have the world's largest pencil.
So there we are. We've got 7 vintage style, goes that way, ephemera to use in projects. I'll just show you each one a bit closer. So that one is about tea time. Yeah, so we had the clock stencil, clock stamp, and then a teapot. I stamped a T on there. That one was a ticket. That was using the watercolour background and tissue paper with script on. I stamped the map and then used a real stamp. And I think using the crinkly scissors is, I call them crinkly scissors, I don't know what to call them, is a good idea for tickets. I've misplaced my hole punch, but I've just cut out the little semicircle bit. Same with this one for the Eiffel Tower. So it's a good way of using one of my photos. And that went on the paint swatch. That one was the bit of paper that I'd started something ages ago. A bit of washi tape, bird cage on there. And this is one that I had trouble with. I'm not sure about this one, but yeah, it's okay. It definitely needed something in the middle, but maybe it should be a bit bigger. Yeah, that definitely reminded me of an owl. So it's quite cute that I put that on there. Yeah, then this one, I thought I'd do a crafty themed one, so measuring tape in the background and some buttons on the watercolour cut-offs, and then this tag butterfly on the jelly paper, a bit of washi tape and script stamp as well. So yeah, just a few ideas there. I might use them in the projects I've got coming up, but if not, I'm sure I'll use them at some point. Okay, I shall see you soon.